The throne room of the alien palace was vast and glowing with silver light. Tall windows stretched upward, showing snowy mountains outside. At the center, on a high throne carved from black stone, sat the queen. Her crown glittered, and her crimson skin shone like fire. Her eyes were sharp and cold as she looked down at the human standing before her. The court was filled with alien nobles dressed in shining armor and silk robes. They whispered and laughed, mocking the sight of the lone human. He wore simple clothes, no crown, no armor. His hands were empty, yet his eyes burned with calm fire. The queen raised her hand, her golden rings catching the light. "This is the creature they call human," she said, her voice echoing across the hall. "He comes from a world of dirt. He thinks himself strong. Today, we shall remind him of his weakness." Her words brought laughter from the nobles. At her signal, a tall female warrior stepped forward. She was the queen's chosen champion. Her armor was black and gold, her body strong, her red eyes glowing with pride. She carried a long blade that hummed with energy. The crowd cheered, chanting her name. For years she had won every duel, no rival ever standing against her. The queen smiled coldly. "You will fight my warrior. Human," she declared. "She will humiliate you. She will show the court that humans are nothing. And when you fall, you will kneel before me as a slave." Gasps filled the room. The nobles looked at the human, waiting for fear, waiting for trembling knees. But the man stood tall, his face calm. He did not lower his gaze. His voice was steady. "I accept." The queen narrowed her eyes. His courage was not what she expected. Still, she leaned back on her throne, amused. "Then let the duel begin," she said, waving her hand. The warrior stepped into the circle in the center of the hall. The human followed, his steps slow but firm. The hall grew silent. Every noble leaned forward to watch. The warrior raised her blade, smirking. "You will beg before the end," she hissed. The human said nothing, only watching her movements. His calmness unsettled her. The clash began. The warrior swung her blade in a blur. The sound of metal hummed through the hall. The human dodged, stepping aside with perfect timing. The blade missed him by an inch. The crowd gasped. The warrior attacked again. Faster, stronger. Her strikes cut through the air, sparks flying as the blade hit stone. But again and again, the human evaded. His body moved with precision, each step measured. The nobles who had laughed now watched in silence. The queen's smile faded slightly. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. This was not how humiliation was meant to look. The human's calm face, his silent defiance, it was dangerous. The warrior grew angry. Her strikes became reckless. She roared and lunged with all her strength. The human stepped aside, his hand brushing her arm. In a single move, he twisted her balance. She stumbled forward, falling to one knee. The hall gasped louder than before. The queen slammed her hand on the throne armrest. "Do not falter," she barked. Her voice thundered across the chamber. The warrior rose quickly, shame burning her face. She charged again, this time with blind fury. The human moved like water, calm and unshaken. His body dodged, his hand struck, not with a blade, but with precision and control. Every move showed skill beyond brute force. He was not only fighting her strength, he was breaking her pride. The nobles began whispering nervously. Their eyes darted between the queen and the human. The air was heavy. Everyone felt it. Something was shifting. The warrior's breathing grew heavy. Her strikes slowed. Her face dripped with sweat. The human still stood tall, calm as a mountain. Then, in a final motion, he caught her arm, twisted, and sent her blade crashing to the floor. Silence filled the hall. The proud champion of the queen was on her knees, weaponless, her head lowered in defeat. The human stepped back. Not boasting, not smiling, only standing still, his eyes never leaving the queen. The queen's face darkened. Her pride had been struck. What was meant to be the humiliation of a human had become humiliation for her warrior. The nobles stared, in shock, afraid to laugh, afraid to cheer, afraid even to breathe. The queen's voice broke the silence, low and cold. "You dare," she said. Her eyes locked on the human, burning with fury. "You dare shame my warrior in my hall." Her words were a promise of punishment. A storm ready to fall, the human spoke, his voice steady. "I fought because you ordered it. The result is truth. Do not be angry at me. Be angry at the lies you tell your people about humans." Gasps filled the hall again. Never before had anyone spoken to the queen in such a way. Her eyes widened for only a second, then narrowed with deadly calm. She leaned back slowly, her mind racing. The queen had planned to break the human spirit. Instead, before all her court, her own authority had been questioned. She would not let this insult pass. A cruel idea formed in her mind, and her lips curled into a dangerous smile. The crowd waited in silence. The air was heavy with suspense. The queen's next words would decide not only the human's fate, but also the fate of her warrior, who now knelt in shame. And as her voice rose, sharp and merciless, the hall braced for her command. The throne room floor was marked by the duel. Dust hung in the air, and the echo of the fallen blade still lingered. The queen's champion knelt on one knee, breathing hard, her pride wounded. The human stood calm, his chest rising steady, his hands empty yet full of power. The nobles stared in disbelief, their whispers sharp like arrows. The queen's lips curled into a thin smile, but her eyes burned with hidden rage. She could not allow the duel to end this way. Her voice rang out, strong and sharp. "Again," she commanded. "The fight is not over until one is broken." The hall trembled with her words. The warrior's head snapped up, shame and fury burning in her red eyes. She snatched her blade from the floor, rising to her feet with trembling strength. The human did not flinch. His face showed no fear, only patience. He shifted his stance, balanced like a seasoned fighter. His calmness was louder than any shout. The nobles leaned forward, desperate to see the human crushed, desperate to see the queen's honor restored. The warrior roared and lunged. Her blade cut through the air like fire. The sound cracked against the stone walls. The human dodged again, sliding to the side, his movements smooth, precise, almost effortless. The warrior struck again, harder, faster, but he was already gone. His body moved like wind slipping through fingers. Gasps rippled through the hall. The warrior's strikes grew heavier, sparks bursting from the floor as her blade slammed down. The human waited for each opening, every reckless strike showing him more of her weakness. Still, he did not counter with cruelty. His strikes were controlled, small movements that turned her strength against her. The queen's smirk faded. The warrior gritted her teeth, sweat dripping down her face. She swung wildly, her voice cracking with rage. "Stand still and fight," she screamed. Her blade came down with all her force. The human stepped in close, his hand snapping to her wrist. In one swift motion, he twisted, and the blade spun from her grip, clattering across the floor again. The hall fell silent. All eyes widened. Nobles who once laughed now sat frozen. Their queen's champion had been disarmed twice. Humiliated before all, the human released her arm and stepped back, showing mercy, his voice calm. "You fight with pride, but pride blinds you. You do not see your mistakes." The warrior's breath came heavy, her chest rising fast. For a moment, her eyes flickered with doubt. She had never been spoken to like that, never been treated with such strange respect. But then shame twisted into rage once more. She grabbed her blade and charged. This time, the human did not only dodge, he struck. His hand slammed into her armor at the chest, forcing her back. She staggered, stumbling across the floor. The nobles gasped again. The human pressed forward, his strikes fast but controlled. A hand to her arm, a sweep to her leg, and she was on the ground, flat against the cold stone. The warrior cried out, the sound echoing in the great hall. She tried to rise, but the human's foot pressed lightly against her blade, pinning it. He stood over her, not cruel, not gloating, simply showing victory, his voice steady. Enough. The queen's fingers dug into the armrest of her throne. Her pride burned. Her champion, the symbol of her rule, was beaten before her nobles. Her command for humiliation had turned into her own, yet she could not let it end. Not here, not now. The nobles shifted uneasily. Some whispered, "The human is strong," others muttered, "This is dangerous." The queen's power looks weak. The tension was heavy, the silence sharp. The queen rose slowly, her golden crown glinting in the silver light. Her voice boomed. "You may have won this round, human, but strength is not proven in a single fight." She turned her gaze to her warrior. "Rise, champion, fight again, fight until he can no longer stand." The warrior rose shakily, her pride bleeding more. Then her body, her eyes flickered toward the human, for the first time uncertain. She raised her blade once more. Though her hands shook, the human tilted his head, calm as ever. "This is not strength," he said softly. "This is cruelty." The queen's eyes narrowed. Her pride was threatened not only by defeat, but by the human's words. She clenched her fist. "You will fight until one of you is broken," she declared. Her voice shook with rage masked as command. The duel raged once more. The warrior came with desperation, her blade flashing like lightning, but the human flowed around every strike, his counters firm, precise. His hand struck her shoulder, his knee pressed her back. Within moments, she was down again, her blade torn from her grasp. Her body lay trembling on the cold floor. The nobles gasped louder than ever. The hall was heavy with silence. The queen's warrior had been beaten not once, not twice, but completely, utterly, with the entire court as witness. The human stepped back again, refusing to strike her further. His voice calm. "The fight is over. Do not make her suffer more." The queen's eyes burned with fury. Her throne no longer felt steady. Her court no longer felt secure. The human had not only defeated her champion, he had defeated her pride. Her mind raced for punishment, for a way to turn shame into control, and in that moment, a cruel and clever thought came to her lips. The crowd leaned forward, holding their breath. The queen's voice cut through the air like a blade. "If my champion cannot defeat the human," she declared, her words sharp, "then let her punishment be worse than defeat." The hall trembled with suspense. The warrior looked up in shock, her chest heaving. The human stood still, waiting. The queen's cruel smile widened, ready to deliver her judgment, and with her next command, the course of all their fates would change. The throne room trembled with silence. The warrior knelt on the floor, her blade far from reach, sweat dripping from her brow. The human stood calm, his chest rising slowly, his eyes never leaving the queen. The nobles whispered in shock, none daring to speak too loudly. All waited for the queen's judgment. The queen rose from her throne, her crimson robes flowing like fire. Her crown gleamed in the silver light. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with fury. She had promised her court that the human would be humiliated. Instead, it was her champion who lay broken before all. Her pride demanded a punishment that would shift shame away from her throne. She stepped forward, her voice sharp. "You, my champion, have failed me," she said. Her words cut like a blade. The warrior lowered her head, her heart burning with humiliation. She had never lost a duel, never tasted defeat. Now her shame echoed in every corner of the palace. The queen's voice rose louder. "And for failure there is a price." The nobles leaned forward, their eyes wide. They expected exile, perhaps death. But the queen's mind was darker, crueler. She looked at the human, her lips curling into a smile. "Your punishment," she declared, her voice ringing like thunder, "is to marry the human you could not defeat." Gasps filled the hall. The nobles erupted in shocked cries. Some laughed nervously, others whispered in disbelief. The warrior's head shot up, her eyes wide with rage. "No!" she shouted, her voice cracking. "You cannot!" But her words were drowned by the queen's cold laughter. The queen raised her hand, silencing the court. "You lost before all. she said, her tone cruel. Your pride is broken, your honor gone, let your shame be bound. To him, let your life be tied to the one who defeated you. The warrior's heart pounded, her fists clenched. The idea of being bound to a human was worse than exile, worse than death. Her voice trembled. I would rather die. But the queen's eyes flashed. Then you disobey your queen, she snapped. And that is treason. The hall froze. The warrior's breath caught. She could not disobey, not without risking execution. Her eyes burned with anger, but she bowed her head, silent in her chains of duty. The human watched. His expression unreadable. He had not asked for this. He had fought only because the queen had ordered it. Now he found himself pulled into her cruelty. He stepped forward, his voice calm. This punishment is not justice, he said. You humiliate her, not me. The queen's eyes narrowed. Her pride would not allow challenge. She leaned closer, her voice low and sharp. Do not mistake my mercy for weakness, human. You live only because I choose it. Question me again, and I may change my mind. The human stood firm. He did not bow. His silence spoke louder than words. The nobles whispered again. Some admired his courage, others feared his defiance. The queen turned from him, raising her arms to the court. It is decided, she declared. The bond will be made before the next moon. My warrior will be his, and my word is law. The nobles bowed their heads. Though unease rippled through them, none dared to oppose the queen. The warrior's chest rose and fell heavily. Her mind screamed with fury, but she could not escape. Her fate, the human turned his eyes toward her. Their gazes met for the first time since the duel. Her eyes were full of fire and hate. His were steady, calm, almost pitying. For a moment, neither spoke. But the silence between them said more than words could. The queen returned to her throne, satisfied. She believed she had twisted defeat into control. She believed her cruel punishment would turn the human's victory into mockery. Yet, hidden beneath her triumph was a shadow of unease. For the human's calm had unsettled her court. His defiance had left whispers in the air, and the marriage she declared in spite might not chain him, but free him. The guards moved forward, pulling the warrior to her feet. She resisted, but their grip was strong. They led her out of the hall, her head bowed in shame. The human followed, walking calmly, as if he already knew this was not the end. As the heavy doors closed behind them, the queen leaned back in her throne. Her fingers tapped against the stone armrest. Her smile was sharp, but her mind restless. The hall had seen her power, but they had also seen her weakness. The duel that was meant to prove humans were nothing had instead planted doubt. The nobles began to leave, whispering as they went. Some said the queen was clever, turning shame into punishment. Others said she had gone too far, forcing her proud warrior into such a bond. None could deny the truth. Something had shifted. In the palace, and it began with the human, in the quiet of the corridors, the warrior walked beside the guards, her heart heavy. She hated the human, hated the thought of being bound to him. Yet in the back of her mind, the memory of his calm voice, his steady eyes would not fade. She clenched her fists, whispering to herself, "This is not the end. I will never bow to him." The human walked behind her, silent but thoughtful. He knew the queen's punishment was meant to break them both. But deep inside, he also knew that sometimes cruelty plants the seed of rebellion, and this seed had already begun to grow. The palace was silent after the duel. The halls that once echoed with laughter now carried whispers. The nobles avoided the queen's gaze. They bowed deeply when she passed, but their eyes told another story. Doubt had entered their hearts, and the queen felt it pressing on her throne like a shadow. In her private chamber, the queen paced across the polished floor. Her golden crown rested on a table. Her hands trembled with fury as she thought of the human. He had not only defeated her champion, but he had also stolen the pride of her court. Every noble had seen it, and every noble now wondered if the queen's word was as powerful as before. She clenched her fists, her crimson eyes glowing. "I will not be made a fool," she whispered. Her voice was low, dangerous. She had given the order for the marriage to protect her pride. But as the hours passed, she began to feel the weight of her own decision. The warrior sat alone in her quarters. Her armor was gone, replaced with a simple robe. Her blade lay on the floor beside her. She stared at it, her heart heavy. She had never been defeated before, never felt the sting of humiliation. Now her future was bound to the very man who had shamed her. Her fists shook as she whispered, "I will not accept him, I will not." Yet her mind returned again and again to his calm face, his steady eyes. His strength had been undeniable, not only of body, but of spirit. The human, meanwhile, was kept in a guarded room. He did not protest. He sat quietly, watching the moonlight through the window. He knew the queen's punishment was not meant to honor him. It was meant to twist his victory into mockery. Yet he did not feel defeated. In the silence of the night, he whispered to himself, "Her cruelty is her weakness, and weakness always cracks." The next morning, the queen entered the throne room. The nobles had gathered once more. She stood tall, her robe flowing like fire. Her voice rang across the hall. "My will is law. The marriage will take place before the next moon. Let it be known that failure is punished, and disobedience has a price." The nobles bowed, but their whispers spread again. Some questioned the wisdom of binding a warrior to a human. Others wondered if the queen feared the human more than she admitted. Their voices were soft, but their doubt grew like roots beneath stone. The queen sat on her throne, her eyes scanning the hall. She saw unease in her people, and it made her chest tighten. She had ruled through fear, through strength, through pride. But fear can turn to rebellion if cracks appear. And the human was a crack she could not seal. Later she summoned her champion. The warrior entered, her face pale but her stance firm. She bowed low, though bitterness burned in her chest. The queen studied her carefully. "You will obey," she said coldly. "You will marry him. You will accept this bond. Your shame will remind all that." "No one escapes my judgment." The warrior's voice trembled. "My queen, is this truly justice, or is it cruelty?" Her question was bold, too bold. The nobles nearby gasped. The queen's eyes flared with rage, but she hid it behind a cold smile. "It is both," she replied. "And it is my will." The warrior lowered her head, her heart twisting. She could not defy the queen, yet she could not deny the strange feeling growing inside her. The human had defeated her, but he had shown her something she had never seen before: restraint, respect, control. That night, as she sat in silence, her thoughts turned restless. She remembered how he had stood calm while the court mocked him, how he had shown mercy when he could have struck her down. Her pride screamed against it, but a small voice whispered, "Perhaps he is not what I thought." The queen, in her chamber, stared out at the mountains. Her heart burned with anger, but beneath it was fear. She had hoped the punishment would destroy both the warrior's pride and the human's dignity. Yet the more she thought, the more she realized she had created something dangerous. Instead of breaking them, she had bound them together. If the warrior came to respect the human, if the nobles saw them as a symbol of strength, her throne would tremble. She whispered to herself, "I must watch them closely. I must not let this bond grow." The human, sitting in his room, looked at the stars. His thoughts were quiet, but sharp. He did not know the future, but he felt it in his bones. The queen's plan would fail, for bonds built from cruelty can turn into alliances stronger than chains. The palace slept under the cold moonlight. The queen plotted. The warrior struggled with her pride. And the human prepared for what would come. None knew yet, but the queen's own punishment had sown the seeds of her greatest dilemma. A bond she wanted to be shameful might one day rise against her, and in the silence of that night, the fate of the palace, the throne, and the queen herself began to shift.